this morning. But let me begin with a quote from Sri Aurobindo. I don't know if many of you have read it, but if you have not, you will never forget it. Earth's flowers spring up and laugh at time and death. And this is what we are seeing in Mother's Garden. We are seeing a very small beginning, but also vast. There are acres and acres still to come of creation. And I want to invite all of you to contribute in any way you can. Finances are always a great help, but an equally great help can be your labor, part-time labor. We would appreciate the help of so many people to learn about the flowers, to learn how to care for them, to begin to understand why Mother, in all her work of bringing down the supramental, took so much time to name almost 900 flowers. It could have been a lifetime's work for one person, and Mother did it like that. Why and how did she do it? The first question, why she did it, is because she had a deep love for flowers. And in my first book, done with a few other people, we quoted many of the things that Mother said about the flowers. And there are some that I will share with you, but first, one by Sri Aurobindo. When Sri Aurobindo was asked, why does this flower that is named for your compassion fade so quickly? And Sri Aurobindo answered, my compassion does not fade with its symbol. And then he put a second sentence. I think that has carried me through more than 60 years. Flowers are the moment's representation of things that are in themselves eternal. And so we see that the flowers are eternal. They have cycles of growing, budding, and blossoming. And when the blossoms are finished, they're pollinated and they offer us seeds. Complete life cycle in beauty. Now, let's look a little bit into Mother's quotations. The flowers are the prayers of the vegetal world. I remember Richard Pearson, who worked with me for a while, went to Mother and he said, Mother, there is no word vegetal. Mother said, look it up in the dictionary. And he found it. So Mother says the plants offer their beauty to the Supreme. Oh, they are offering it to us as we walk through. Of that there's no question. But their beauty they offer first to the Supreme. Mother speaks to us so much about the importance of beauty in our lives. Beauty of our thoughts, beauty of our actions, beauty of our words. And the flowers express this beauty in their own way. The smallest flower has an expression of beauty, as well as the largest. So how did Mother begin to identify, we can say, flowers? Many of us don't know this. But Mother would look at a flower when we sent it to her, and the Matrimanya Gardens nursery that I built with Mother's blessings sent between 60 and 80 flowers to her in a year and a half before she stopped naming flowers. She stopped somewhere in beginning of 1972, not even 2 years before she left her body. She kept naming flowers. Mother tells us that plants have feelings because they are alive, and they should not be treated brutally. This is something every gardener learns, to work with love and care when planting a seed, invoking the presence when planting a seed, or planting or transplanting a plant. When you go around, and I was just with a little girl earlier, and I said to her, you see, if you can hold a flower to your heart, that vibration will come in. If you can hold it to your head, it will come into your mind, and it will live with you there permanently. But you have to have the correct opening. And how do we open to the flowers? Mother tells us the first thing is to love them. So important. And she speaks to us of different flowers in great detail. The plumeria, which is one of the flowers that I loved so much, went all over the world. Hawaii, Thailand, Singapore, and many other countries to collect varieties of psychological perfection. At one time we had nearly 300 different varieties. I think it's down into the hundreds now, but still, it was the largest collection in the world at that time. And people used to come from tropical botanical gardens all over the world and ask for cuttings, which is an easy thing to give. You can always give a cutting of a plumeria and be 95% sure that if you plant it properly, that is, don't give it too much water at first, it will grow, it will set roots. Not too wet soil when you plant it, because it's a dry climate plant. And as we learn about these plants, and you see hundreds of them here, the work that has been done is extraordinary. First, we look at the plant, we identify it, and then someone makes a label based on Mother's significance. We have a botanical name, which is genus and species. The genus introduces a group of plants, the species an individual type, and sometimes we have, in addition to that, a cultivar or a hybrid. And I can tell you now personally that the supramental is working very, very intensively. And we are seeing new flowers that we have never seen before. Flowers of greater beauty, of greater fragrance, of different colors. Flowers that one day will grow here, because Mother told us when the lake is completed, all that work of moving the soil will be used to build a mountain on which fir trees will come, and there will be snow in Oroville. This seems so strange to us, but Mother has told us this. And I think I have to emphasize that Mother met little beings after these fir trees were planted. And they said, "Why did you plant fir trees here?" Because we are the beings who take care of the fir trees. And so they had to come and take care of them. And we are taking care of so many things here. It's a learning process for us every day. And it's a wonderful group that I'm privileged and honored to work with. They work with their hands and their hearts and their aspirations. And so we see, as we walk around, how many plants they have planted and how many of them speak to us. The plants will always speak to us. It may not be in our French or English or Hindi or Tamil language, but they do communicate to us many things. How much water they want, or how little. What kind of soil condition they would like. How much sun or shade do they require? And it goes on and on. They tell us so many things. How to plant companion plants, where one plant will keep away insects from a rarer plant. We know that story of the tomatoes that keep bugs away from other plants in the garden. So Mother talks about fragrance of flowers, and she tells us that it was the fragrance that first got her to begin naming flowers. And now I want to go into the main part of my talk, which is the connection of the earth and flowers. I have so much to say on this, to share with you. And in the back of our book here, we have made many indexes, not all thorough, but not too bad. So we begin with the botanical name in this book. If you don't know the botanical name, how can you know the flower? And then in this book, we begin with the spiritual significance. Mother called them the messages of the flowers. And that's why we titled this book, Flowers and Their Messages. Can you believe it's only 240 rupees for this book today? So, in the spiritual significance of flowers, this lady, Lilo, who has passed away, and her friend Bob, who's still with us in the archives, wanted to do something different. And they said, "What do you suggest, Narad?" And I said, why not do something based on the themes of the flowers? The divine, the vital, the mental, the physical, etc. And they did that. But when you open the book, if you don't know the significance, how will you know the flower? So we have two books here that are very helpful for those who may know the botanical name and for those who may know the flower. But I am going to write a third book with the help of many people. And that book is going to be arranged by color. So you see a red flower, and all the red flowers are in that section. A blue flower, and all the blues will be there. And there'll be some shadings too. There's lavender blue, or we call something we call mauve, and deep blue and light blue, but it will always be under the blue. Okay, what is this connection here? Sri Aurobindo has explained to us the various parts of the being in great detail, especially in the synthesis of yoga, the life divine, and in his letters on yoga, as well as other books. But Mother has done the same thing with the flowers. How has she done it? Well, she began by telling us what the color of a flower meant. So we have the dark or the dull reds, and that is the material. When we get into a brighter red, that is the physical. When we get into lavender and purple, that is the vital, the life energy. When we go to the heart, it is always pink. And when we go to the mind, it is generally yellow. But it also can be, in the higher ranges of the mind, orange or gold. Now, I haven't left any out except white. And white is usually one of these three things: purity, perfection, integrality. So we have many, many white flowers, more than 100 white flowers that Mother named. It's a big study. We need your help to work with us in this study, to identify new flowers. Look at this marvelous arrangement here. This is frankness. Now, what is frankness? Well, we have a botanical name for it, Gerbera. And it comes from an old plant in South Africa that had narrow petals and wide separations. Now, does this have narrow petals and wide separation? Absolutely not. This is all the result of years and years of hybridizing. And these hybrids are so magnificent. They're so radiant. Every color speaks to us. But Gerbera, and I'm going to read this to you, it's called Gerbera Jamesonii, or the Transvaal daisy, telling us it's Africa. And Mother says, well, let me go back just a little bit. When I was completing this book in 1968, We wrote to Mother, Tara Johar. Many of you know Tara, who has received the Padma Shri and has built the Sri Aurobindo Center in New Delhi. She was the one assigned to take the flowers to Mother. So I would pack them in a plastic bag, put that bag in a box, and the moment I had a new flower, run to the ashram and give it to Tara, who would take it upstairs to Mother. I would stand by the samadhi and I could hear Mother exclaiming, "Magnifique, perfect." And Mother would speak in French. She would usually give the significance in French, and she would I thought I had put it on silent. Okay, so the flowers there in front of Mother, and I am waiting downstairs by the samadhi to hear Mother's exclamations, or to wait for Tara to come down and tell me what Mother said. Well, at one point, as we neared completion of this book, we wrote to Mother and asked her if she could give us a comment on each of the flowers. Mother agreed, but there was a proviso. She said, "I want to see all the flowers." Oh, what a work that was for us, to go around everywhere and collect so many flowers. And of course, Mother already knew the flowers of France, the hydrangeas, the tulips, and all of these marvelous flowers that do not grow here yet, but they will grow here. Mother mentioned as a first step, we could have greenhouses, cool greenhouses, where we could start these flowers. But we are already beginning to see something very extraordinary, that the flowers are beginning to adapt to this climate. I'll tell you a story about my very dear friend and one of the finest gardeners the ashram has ever known. His name was Parichand. Does anyone here remember Parichand?
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. Well, he was a soul of total joy. I could go into his office, small little office, just one street behind the ashram. I'd be totally exhausted because the heat of summer was very difficult for me to take, especially working in the sun and planting. The moment I entered his office, this joy would radiate over me, and it would flow from him into me. And it was the joy of the Divine Mother. Now, I want to go back to frankness for the moment and complete that. Frankness, Mother's comment, says candidly what it has to say, without caring for the result. Now that sounds pretty strong, but it doesn't mean to blurt out words, accusations, hostility, because Mother says, when you are going to say something, immediately stop and wait a few moments and the right thing will come. When we blurt out immediately, usually the wrong thing comes. So now we're going to go through the colors. But I first want to complete my brief honor to Parichand. Every year he would import 50 roses from the West, the finest new roses. And they would bloom a little and then die. He did this for more than 3 years. And then he went to Mother and he said, "Mother, this is happening. They all die. I guess they're just not meant for this climate." This is what Mother told him. Continue doing this until it gets into the consciousness of the flower that it can survive here. So when I built the Matrimondia Gardens nursery, I would put a plant in the ground and say to that plant, "If I can make it here, you can make it here." And they did. They actually did. Now, what are these significances to us? Let's begin with color. We have the dullest red, as I mentioned, material. And I mentioned the other colors as we go up the scale. And white, of course, purity, integrality. So we can see in this book that there are so many different colors of plants, flowers. So let's take just an opened here, Clitoria ternatia. It's the mussel shell creeper. And Mother gave it 4 different names. The first one is the pale blue with the white center, a very beautiful one. Krishna's light in the senses. Now, the white one is not Krishna at all. It is purified senses. And then we have the ultramarine, single or double, which Mother named Radha's consciousness. And then we have a very light mauve, single flower, that Mother gave Radha's consciousness in the vital. Now what does she say about these flowers? We describe the flower, and that's one thing we won't have to do in the new book. We won't have to describe it, except maybe to offer a comparison of the size to something else. Is it a big, big flower? Is it a tiny little flower? So these things could be, but we don't have to say it's a papilionaceous flower with one cup-shaped petal, pale blue with white center, countryside creeper. All of these things can go in an index attached to that flower or on the page after that flower, and we will have not only the description, but already in our website, Mother and Sri Aurobindo, one word, and Mother and Sri Aurobindo.in, 2 sites. .in is all the texts of all the books, hundreds and hundreds of books of Sri Aurobindo, Mother and disciples. And Mother and Sri Aurobindo is the YouTube section where all the interviews with disciples and devotees are held. And I invite all of you today who would like to tell the story of how you met Mother and Sri Aurobindo, or how you came to the ashram, or how you were led here, how you heard of Oroville, etc., etc. Please contact me afterwards and we can discuss, because I can do these interviews in Oroville and I can do them in Pondicherry. So, let's go back to Clitoria ternatia, the mussel shell creeper. Krishna's light in the senses. Look what Mother says. A first step towards transformation. There are so many other Krishna's flowers also. There is a little flower that blooms in the fields, and it's a tiny little blue flower. Interesting name. First sign of Krishna's light in matter. I said, oh, this is such an important flower. I have to try to propagate it. I tried for 5 years and I failed. Why did I fail? Because it's just the first sign of Krishna's light in matter. And you see, I learned something from that. Okay, Krishna's light in the senses, a first step towards transformation. Purified senses can only be obtained by total surrender to the truth. Radha's consciousness symbolizes perfect attachment to the divine. Now, Radha's consciousness in the vital, perfect attachment to the divine replaces all vital attractions and passions. So we already have so many marvelous things in these books. The only negative, I'm afraid, with the double volume is its heavy weight and its heavy cost. But when the new book comes out, I guarantee it will be affordable to everyone. We traveled every year, 4 times a year to Bangalore, 4 times a year to Chennai, and once a year to Mumbai, Calcutta, and other parts of India, to collect plants, to meet the great horticulturists. And it was my honor to go with them into the Western Ghats and collect these marvelous tree seeds, which I would plant and distribute to the Greenbelt, native trees. We've also done many indigenous trees also, and many tropical trees that are new to India. You can see the tababuya, which is from South America, and it is one of the most beautiful flowering plants. We have a golden one, we have a lavender one, and we have the red one, pink one. So, and they are all tough, and they withstand the monsoon, they withstand cyclones. So these are very important things. One day I sent to Mother the myrtle flower, and my heart burst open when I heard her say, "To live only for the divine." You can imagine hearing Mother's voice down by the Samadhi, commenting on these flowers. Sometimes the flower immediately gave her its name, and sometimes it was a bit shy. and wouldn't give it immediately. Maybe 7 years later or more, they showed it to Mother again, and she got the significance. These are extraordinary remembrances. Of course, the daffodils, that was something of France and the cold climates. Power of beauty. And then there's the poet's daffodil, Narcissus poeticus. And the species name often tells us a little bit about the plant. It may be honoring the person who found the plant, and I'm going to talk about that in a little while. Do I have time yet? I have enough time?
Yes.
Okay. The poet's Narcissus is so beautiful. It's yellow with a little orange cup with an edge to it. Mother says it is beauty aspiring for the supramental realization. And many of us who come from the West know that these are common flowers. I mean, look at Wordsworth's great poem on daffodils, where he sees 10,000 daffodils in a glance. Oh. Now, what did I say I was just going to talk about? Let me get into that. I'd like to talk a little bit about the plumerias, because Mother said there are so many things about the plumeria. Now, psychological perfection is known as the temple tree, or the champa, or the frangipani. You know, if you've been to Hawaii, you've generally had someone greet you and put a lei of frangipani around your head. Anyone have that experience? 1, 2, only 2 people. Oh, it's very wonderful greeting. Mother says there is not one psychological perfection, but 5. And those 5 are sincerity, faith, devotion, aspiration, and surrender. So we can see the importance of this flower. And there is a big plant as you come from the entrance to the Matrimandiya towards the chamber of this same flower, psychological perfection. But it is perfect psychological perfection because the petals are broad, and it was planted by Madhav Pandit many, many years ago. So I want to cover as much as possible and talk a little bit about common names. Once we have identified the flower or somewhat the range of the color, I mean, we can have red and we can have a reddish orange too, or we can have an orange red. So we have to take those things into consideration. We also have variegated flowers, 2 colors, and Mother has named many of the variegated flowers. So what she has done for many flowers, and I'll get into one that you know very well, the zinnia. I think most of you know what a zinnia is. And so let's look at what Mother has said about zinnia. And it's one of the last flowers. It is the last flower in the book. I would I probably sent close to a dozen different colors of zinnia that had not been named before to Mother. And she would name each one. And so we have 14 different zinnias. And when I sent more, Mother said, we will have a general significance. So the general significance is very important to us because it tells us that all the flowers in this group of zinnias are endurance. And I can tell you a little bit about endurance because when I was in the deserts of California, I saw zinnias blooming in the sand with no water for 3 months. That's endurance. We also have other flowers that bear the significance that we all know. We have a flower that's a wildflower here that's called courage. Many of you can see it growing all over. And courage is a little evanescent. It's not a full day bloomer because it's telling us this is a work that we have to do. We have to learn to grow in courage and faith. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about hibiscus because we all, I think, love hibiscus. But it's a very challenging subject. Okay?
No, it maybe batteries. No.
Thank you. The mother loved hibiscus. Do you know that she named 43 varieties of hibiscus? 43! The most of anything. Roses, I think, are, and zinnias are second, but 43 hibiscus. Well, when I was about to come to Oroville in 1969. I was living in California and working with a wonderful group of people at the ashram East-West Cultural Center, founded by Dr. Judith Tyberg, whom Sri Aurobindo named Jyoti Priya. So each weekend we would go and collect as many seeds of these marvelous trees that I could take to Oroville and plant and see if they would survive. So here's what happened. Many of them came very well, but they were not too happy in the South Indian tropics. So I had an idea. Let me take a van of these plants to the Lal Bagh in Bangalore. And I met Dr. Mari Gowda, who was the director of the Lal Bagh, with this gift from Oroville. In turn, he gave me 12 of the most magnificent hibiscus I have ever seen. These hibiscus were originally from Hawaii, and we have unfortunately lost most of them. Through human error, human ego, but I won't go into that because I want to tell you how valuable these were to Mother. She would look at them, and speak so loud I would hear every word downstairs by the Samadhi. And she named them 11 of the 12 for Oroville, charm of Oroville, realization of Oroville, and so many others. And then one day Mother said, we need a little wider significance for these magnificent hibiscus. And so she named them charm of the new creation, realization of the new creation. So now we have a flower with two names, but the same flower, because Oroville is the new creation. Now, next. When I would take a flower to Mother, and I did it one day, with a little flower from the stalks of the plant that is used in distributing these things for symbols. I guess it's Ichi, I don't remember. Someone will remember that. And Mother was very, very interested. But she didn't give a significance. She just looked at it and looked at it. And then Shamsundar, who was then in charge of Oroville, said to me, put your head in Mother's lap. I had never done that. I had always put my head on her feet. And I can't say any more. What you are seeing here today in Mother's flower garden is the work of many people using their hands, digging in this soil, planting with love and devotion. We used to have this program at Savitri Bhavan, and now we have a place for it, Mother's Flower Garden. It will be about 5 acres, continuing. And so you are seeing the small but very sacred beginning of Mother's Flower Garden. If you have any questions, I have about 10 minutes left. I'll be happy to answer them. If not, we can go on a little bit. Questions?
What is the difference between Matrimandia Gardens and Mother's Flower Garden? Also, how you see the difference between Matrimandia Garden and Mother's Flower Garden? Or, yeah.
In 1968, after a very serious automobile accident in 1967, in which we were almost killed, we finally received $3,000 for medical expenses. It would probably be $3 million today, but it was $3,000. And I wrote to Mother, and I said, Mother, I want to send you this money. You saved our life. And Mother wrote back to me, why don't you use the money to come for the inauguration of Oroville? Each ticket was exactly $1,500. So we came. And Mother said to me, "You don't want to come to Oroville in a few years? I feel you can do something there." I answered, "Mother, whatever you wish, Mother." And then began a series of correspondences with her secretary, Udar. So Mother had said a few years, come to Oroville in a few years. Then Udar writes me, no, I guess I wrote first to Mother. And I asked Mother, do you want me to do physical work, or do you want me to do do you want me to go to college and study things like plant combination theory? Mother replied, both. So I had to work during the day with a landscape firm and go to college at night. It was a wonderful experience. Now, when I returned to Oroville in the winter of 1969, there was no Matrimandia then, I found a place, and you can see the sign as you go to Matrimandia. It says nursery. And it had 12 mango trees, and it had a huge canyon in the back, so it was relatively secure. I wrote to Mother, and she blessed it. What I didn't tell you was that Mother also wrote, just before I left the U.S., I want you to come and build the gardens of the Matrimandia. Whoa, huge task. And I worked with Roger quite often and planted wonderful trees in this area that we knew then as the, what was it called? It's called the park now. And the park extends after the Matrimandia circle. And we began to plant, and we planted many, many plants. And then there were the disturbances in Oroville. And I won't go into that very much. I was almost killed. And my wife said I have to return. So I went back with her and would come here from time to time to help out. Because in 1972, the first big branch of the service tree broke off. The service tree in the ashram. This was the most sacred tree in the world to me. And I saw that the boys were cutting it wrongly. They were cutting from the top down. Now, when you do something like that, the weight of the branch or the stub is going to tear the bark all the way down, and you will lose the tree, generally. So Parichand was there, and I asked him, can you tell Mother that I know how to do this? Will she give me permission? He came running back. Mother says, yes, do it. And we cut it, and today you cannot see any damage at all. It was a perfect cut from the bottom up, 1/3, and the top down 2/3. And that's the way we should prune all heavy hanging branches. The story after that is that Parichand came again very quickly, and he said, Mother has given you this blessing packet to care for the service tree for the rest of your life. Well, recently, when I finally decided to give up my home in the U.S. It was a special home. It was called Mother's Garden. And people would come from all over the world, different plant societies, because I planted so many different species. And they would sit in the garden and meditate, sometimes visit, stay for a couple of weeks in the house, big house. And you would think that that was so difficult to give up and to say goodbye to all those plants that you had loved for, I think, almost 22 years. But it was not difficult, and I came with the aspiration to continue the Matrimandya Gardens. Now, there are two things about the Matrimandya Gardens that I have to tell you. One is that Mother wrote to my wife, Mary Helen, quote, "Naturally, the gardens will be in the Japanese way." That has not happened, except in some minor areas. And then Mother wrote to me, "The gardens are as important as the Matrimandya." So I came back, and the new executive said, "We don't know where to place you." And everything I tried to plant, they would tear up or take out. And I was asking the permission and the blessing of the Lord. And so I planted hundreds of orchids. I planted hundreds of water lilies and lotuses. Fortunately, they're still there. I completed 2 gardens with much help, and they are still there, but they don't look the way they should. And so I'm always ready to help at the Matrimandya Gardens. But Mother has indicated to me that my work is here now, where there's much greater sincerity, much deeper aspiration, and of course, executives come and go, and in 2 years things might change. But I'm running 86 now, and the body's not quite as strong as it used to be. So physically, it's a bit challenging, but I do what I can. And any other questions? Because we can go on and on with flowers. And I'm going to have a talk. When is my talk to take people around?